So I will call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Miss Hersey,
Here.
Miss Colasetti,
Here.
Miss Bishop,
Here.
Miss Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Next up is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting of 6-3 and 6-4.
I'll move approval of the minutes from 6/3/2024 and 6/4/2024 Committee of the Whole minutes.
Yes,
I'll second.
thank you.
Well, actually, I wasn't going to second. I was just going to make a comment to city council members. I had asked, and I'm going to check it, when they were talking about the increase in the rental registration inspectors, Ms. Mitten said that we needed an additional one, that we had two. But according to this book, we only have one, so it would go to two. However, some people are saying that it's on different funds. So I'm going to look into that. I just wanted to let people know that that was a question I had based on the minutes.
Okay, it's been moved by Jaya and seconded by James. Any corrections or substantial corrections on the minutes? Okay, all those
I have just one.
yes.
Page 14 of 18 on the minutes packet, although it says 17 in the corner. The last paragraph says CM Wilkins stated that the budget proposals seem reasonable. If we could just clarify, change it to stated that CM Evans' budget proposals seem reasonable. Just to clarify, please.
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
All those in favor with that slight correction by Councilmember Wilkin, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. Next is additions to the agenda. I don't think there are any. Next is presentations and public input. There are no presentations, but if there's anyone else who would like to address the Committee of the Whole. Okay, I will read some of these emails. Dear Urbana City Council, we really don't need any more cops in Urbana. We have more than enough. How about we spend those resources on something that's actually good for the residents? You could probably cut back on the police force substantially, and the only thing people would notice is being harassed slightly less for petty violations. Feel free to read my comment at the meeting. Thanks, Wyatt Kuster. Dear Madam, dear Sir, please read my comment out loud during public input. My name is Sarah Berta, and I am a UC community member since 2021. I take a lot of pride in living in this diverse and welcoming community and am involved with initiatives through my job here at the University Library, the IMC, and grassroots movements. Having lived in capital cities such as London and Paris, I have seen the damage and mistrust of police forces firsthand. In a smaller community that is tighter knit, I believe that we can find solutions before jumping the gun and increasing budgets. I learned about the Barry Dunn consultant who came and offered suggestions. They prompted the officials of UC to consider alternative community response models. It is troubling to see so many council members jump to a decision based on the report without a bare minimum, the completion of the report. As a community member, I ask council to genuinely consider community response models as an alternative to increase policing. Together, we can solve this. To the City Council of Urbana, please read my comment out loud during public input. My name is Catherine Doulerud, and I am an Urbana resident. When Barry Dunn was first hired as a consultant, the stated goal was to consider alternative models to policing. It is troubling to see many council members jump to the decision to hire more police. As it stands, Barry Dunn has seemingly only released phase 1 of its study. In addition, the recommendation to add more police officers and in turn increase the police budget is based solely on the idea that police can respond to emergency calls that are received. However, approximately 72% of Urbana 911 calls routed to the police are for non-criminal complaints or are noise ordinance related. Further, implementing alternative models would be much less expensive for the city based on available salary data. As a community member, I ask council to genuinely consider community response models as an alternative to increasing police, as it is quite clear from the numbers that hiring more police is not needed when considering other factors. Thank you, Catherine Dolared. Please read aloud the letter below at tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, I have to stay home prepping for a colonoscopy. Greetings. I have genuine concerns about the Community Engagement Officer position being recommended for hire. According to the National Center for Post-Traumatic Syndrome Disorder, about 8% of women and 4% of men have PTSD in any given year. From 15 to 43% of females under 18 and 14 to 43% of males under 18 experience at least one trauma before adulthood. I admit I am leery about police officers being the community engagement face of the police force and would prefer someone in the mental health field. However, I have looked at the Illinois Law Enforcement and Training State Board site and do see a 40-hour crisis intervention elective offered. If these positions are filled by police, will the 40-hour training be mandatory and mandatory continuing education requirements? As a trained social worker and a board member of the local Trauma and Resiliency Initiative, I feel such training should be mandatory for all officers, since all officers engage with the public. Respectfully, Lee Ann Kelly. Dear City Council, please read the below email into the record tonight at the City Council meeting. My name is Sam Eilinger, and I'm an Urbana resident. I have spent some time reviewing the Barry Dunn report and listening to the public comments made by other community members in the past. It is with this information in mind that I ask the City Council to decide against increasing the police budget. At a minimum, this decision should not be rushed or be made when we don't have all the information. Perhaps most importantly, Barry Dunn has not completed their analysis, and their report on alternative models is still forthcoming. Since the city has invested in hiring Barry Dunn, why would the council approve this budget with a drastic increase in funds for UPD before their analysis is complete? This budget increase is supposed to help UPD deal with call volume, which often includes nonviolent requests for assistance. In those cases, Urbana could and should consider alternative models, particularly when dealing with mental health crises. It could be more helpful to involve a social worker, therapist, or other professional who specializes in such work. The city is asking for the Urbana Police Department to be the answer to all the needs of our community when that is not realistic or sustainable. Our community needs increased support for housing, mental health, and food security. Our community needs access to support and assistance with getting basic needs met. Social workers are trained to do such things and equipped to help community members understand what support is available to them. Can we not explore methods to diversify the types of support we can offer to the community members in crisis? I am hoping for a model where, when I interact with community members in need of mental health first aid without the resources to get to Carl, that we could call a social worker on call together to get support in accessing those resources. I ask that City Council take the time to just make the first choice available now, but to explore all of the options and possibilities to find a solution that meets the needs of our community. Please vote against increasing the police budget and present some alternatives for community members to explore with you. Best regards, Sam Eilinger. Good afternoon, council members. I hope this email finds you well. I ask that this email be read on the record at the Monday, June 17th, 2024 meeting. On the evening of Monday, June 10th, 2024, I listened to the City Council meeting. Once again, I listened to constituents attack and continue to make false and accusatory comments about Urbana police officers and blatantly tear them down. I have watched the same hecklers and their posse interrupt, disrespect, and present old data from 2007 to 2016 when you have received real-time and current data and statistics about crime in the Urbana community. Why do you continue to entertain comments from constituents that lack credibility and lack credible sources of proof for what they are citing? Regardless, if crime is decreasing in Urbana, crime is still occurring. I listen to my police scanner every evening and listen to the number of calls for service via the police scanner. a scanner that I downloaded from the Apple Store. Do you understand the lack of concern from the same constituents who are loud each week versus not approving the budget proposal for additional officers to ensure that crime continues to decrease and for the safety of our community? Increasing additional staff is not unusual, but we have some members who sit on our city council who apparently have never worked in organizations that have been understaffed, work continuous mandatory overtime, and who get the luxury of spending time with their loved ones. If there's a shortage of officers now and/or officers get injured or sick, the police department will be even shorter. Are you willing to risk even more lives and crime in the Urbana community by not hiring additional officers? If you call 911 to report a crime, the 911 dispatcher then dispatches a police officer to go to the scene. We will always need our police officers in a lot of different situations, and no matter how much you try to pick apart, congregate with cliques, and even meet certain constituents outside of meetings to compare your stories to ensure you vote the same, not hiring additional police officers is also neglecting the safety of our community. This community has an opportunity to repair broken relationships, trust, and more through implementing a community engagement team that is hands-on and can go into most of our vulnerable neighborhoods and triage a lot of the issues and concerns that our community residents express. The implementation of a community engagement team does not take away the services that current and existing community organizations are providing. The community engagement team will assess crises and direct individuals and families to the community organizations that align with the needs of those individuals and families at and during those calls for service. Community policing prioritizes positive relationships between police officers and local communities. The approach focuses on working with communities to identify and address the causes of crime and disorder rather than just reacting to calls for service, which the chief and deputy chief have shown you week after week. The community engagement team can assist with rebuilding and preserving those relationships in our most vulnerable communities. Those are spaces that you frequently speak about with outdated data and a lack of research skills to know that this model has been proven over and over to be effective and has worked. Our most vulnerable populations and the community which they live in are also spaces that are frequent and you do not. We need continuous engagement with citizens, visible police presence, and a team that can dedicate their time to these areas consistently and continuously. This model and proven methodology has been shown through current data and research. This is in your face, and half of you are choosing to ignore the facts for your personal and implicit bias to please less than 1% of those who speak out about Black and brown people and communities who know nothing about my people. Half of you have decided that while there are several agencies who continue to replicate the services that several organizations in this community provide, you only choose those who are your friends or are bullying you to make a decision to choose them. Shameful. When community organizations make their own requests for funding for additional staff due to the needs in the community, why aren't they questioned? As a community member, I can tell you that monies that have been designated to some of these organizations have not always been spent nor designated towards said services. I am glad that the Champaign City Council makes organizations in Champaign show what and where monies are directed towards. However, Urbana does not. Have you ever questioned how some of the very same constituents who have people speaking out and putting them on a pedestal have purchased new vehicles and homes? Have you investigated why some of the services have been discontinued after receiving city monies? Why are agencies truly spending over $100,000 and to the point they are well in the negative and cry for help? There needs to be a policy in place that requires these organizations to report every single penny of what they did with their FERPA monies and any other monies they have received from the city of Urbana. Again, not ready to have that conversation. In the past, I have reached out to some of these, and the rest of this letter will be in the record. From Dr. LaShonda Cunningham. Okay, let me take a sip of water. Dear Urbana City Council members and Mayor Marlin, I hope the City Council members took advantage of the police officers' offer last week for a ride-along. This experience helps people understand and appreciate the hard work and dedication of our police officers. They not only keep our community safe, but also play a vital role as first responders. The police officers are an integral part of our community, and they perform their duties with exceptional skill and commitment. I support the budget increase to the police force in accordance with the recommendations of the Barry Dunn report. Regarding a public comment from earlier this month in which the speaker accused the campus police of excess force against her during a campus protest. The speaker neglected to mention a few things about the protest. Prior to the protest, flyers were distributed on the calling to, quote, escalate for Gaza, end quote, and to take, quote, militant direct action, end quote, see attached. The protesters were practicing, quote, de-arrest, end quote, on the quad prior to the day of the protest in preparation for confrontation with the police. See attached, quote, de-arrest primer, end quote, that was shared by the protest organizers on social media. People from Chicago were bussed in to join the protest on our campus. Resisting arrest is a crime, Class A misdemeanor if no one got hurt, Class 4 felony if someone got injured. Protesters that deliberately break the rules of time, place, and manner, prepare for confrontation with police, and resist arrest are not peaceful protesters. It is ironic that the same protesters who increased the police force workload are now asking the city not to increase the police budget. Sincerely, Ruth Kantorowicz. Hello, City Council members. Please read my comment during tonight's meeting. I am strongly opposed to any budget that increases funding to the Urbana Police. Not only is crime in Urbana at a historic low, but thousands of Urbana residents took to the streets only 4 years ago to demand an end to police violence in our communities. I believe that the Urbana City Council should commit to not increasing the police budget until the alternative response study has been completed. If the majority of service calls received by the city are non-criminal and non-violent, it is an absurd waste of taxpayers' money to increase the police budget. Instead, we must invest in programs to end poverty in our community. I look forward to seeing an Urbana budget that is fair and represents the needs of our community, not the ambitions of the Chief of Police. Sincerely, Leslie Owens. Please read my comment out loud during public input. Hi, I'm Deborah. I've loved living in Urbana for the last 10 years and being part of the community. Tonight, I ask the council to genuinely consider community response models as an alternative to increasing police. When the Barry Dunn consultant was first hired, the goal was to consider alternative community response models. It is distressing to see many council members jump to a decision before the report is completed, which involves 3 more steps for the 4-part plan. Here are some highlights from the first phase of the report that prove Urbana can greatly benefit from implementing community responses instead of increasing police. It has been proven many times over that increasing police increases crime rates. To truly prevent crime, we must invest in community resources and programs to meet the basic life needs of our citizens. Cunningham Township provides excellent services that could do so much more if we invest in them in addition to community responders. 64.6% of calls for Urbana Police Service are not related to any crime, almost double the rate of comparable cities. If we add music and noise complaints, which also aren't crimes, that number rises to 72% of all calls. Crime in Urbana has been on a historic low for 2 years. Alternative response lightens the load for officers while providing trauma-informed, equitable care at less cost. An entry-level cop costs taxpayers about $100,000 a year in salary and benefits alone. An entry-level licensed social worker with 4 to 6 years of education costs only about $55,000. When a nonviolent crisis happens, it is safer for everyone involved to avoid escalation that a weapon brings to otherwise nonviolent crisis situations. Since 70% plus calls are non-criminal in nature, it does not make sense to send law enforcement personnel. In communities with community-based responders, responders can be given radios to directly call for backup from the police if needed. Research found that responders almost never need to call for backup, and the research agency had never heard of a community responder being hurt. The Urbana Police already have a higher ratio of administrative to patrol staff than comparable departments. Their investigation staff has, quote, strong availability, end quote, so they are taking on patrol duties to spend their time since investigations are rare due to our historically low crime rate. Patrol officers will have plenty of time to get all their work done if we have community responders handle 70% of current calls. I happily live in Ward 7, which is also home to many socioeconomically depressed groups, myself included. Traffic stops can be deadly for our Black and brown community members, and increasing police ensures an escalation in police violence. Mr. Quisenberry, it is in your interest to vote in favor of the community responders to protest these community members. We voted you into position, and we can replace you just as easily. All of this information and more can be found and verified at ucimc.org/petition fact sheet. Thank you. And that was from Deborah Hollenberg. Please read these comments into the record. June 17, 2024, dear Mayor and City Council, what I recognize about the debate about policing and budgetary issues is that the number of people who understand the decisions related to these two issues probably number around a dozen people in the whole city, and most of them are taking part in the meeting tonight. The citizenry is not well informed about this issue, despite the sums of money in play. In my experience, when they hear about the proposal, they are against it. I count myself among those against the proposal, and I wouldn't count myself among those dozen people who really know this stuff. I don't understand the city budget or how your decisions today will affect public safety tomorrow. Is the city going to be expanding the police budget on the backs of the underclass and working class? As you approach a vote on the budget, that question is worth asking. My perception is this: you provide huge increases to the police in one budget, then work out how to pay for it in subsequent budgets. Will you cut social service spending, raise taxes on liquor or video gambling or marijuana? All those are consumer-oriented regressive taxes that disproportionately impact the underclass and the working class. So does the sales tax. So did the grocery store tax that the state ended and will result in a revenue shortfall for the city of $1 million. The mayor is quoted as saying the city will absorb the loss this year. The future city governments will need to account for the missing revenue. This is where I feel lost. How does the city just absorb $1 million loss? Plan for a lot of new spending and think about it later. Maybe you plan to raise taxes exclusively on those who can afford to pay them, without really needing to adjust their lifestyles or expectations of the future. If you do this, if you try to tax the rich to pay for the police, the city would have to anticipate all kinds of hassles. Whereas if you tax those who can least afford to pay, they are also supremely unlikely to show up at city council meetings. If the budget gets snarled in the coming years and the police chief keeps coming back for more as he plans to, then you will likely resolve budgetary problems on the backs of the underclass and working class with cuts to social programs and increases in regressive taxes. Notice that no one taking part in this process would ever stand up and say, I would like to expand the police budget in one of the most impoverished cities in the states on the backs of the underclass and working class. But that is how the political narrative could well play out in the coming years. Even as it does play out, no one will say they are doing what they are doing. City government will have new members, new topics will occupy the council's agenda. Then everyone notices we don't have much budgetary discretion because all of the prior and ongoing spending increases for the police, plus revenue shortfalls. So to do anything new and to cover ongoing costs, those future city representatives will cut social programs or raise regressive taxes. I don't think the discussion has adequately addressed the possibility you are taking part in the first step to expand the police budget at the expense of the people least able to pay for it. I recommend you pause any major increases to the police budget until you examine all the possible uses of your present spending authority. At the least, this means waiting for the Barry Dunn study to be fully presented, as well as giving a fair hearing to an alternative responder model. Thanks for considering my comments. Respectfully, Ron Kester. Are there any more emails? Go.
Jay or me? Okay. Hello, City Council member, City Council. Please read this as public input. My name is Javonda White, and I was released May 2nd, 2023. I was set up in a transitional housing center in Chicago to start my 3 years parole, having served 15 years. I was put on house arrest for 30 days. I completed it and was taken off house arrest. I was sent to Chicago a place that I was not familiar with and had no support, nor friends or family, and they told me I had to survive there, and they told me I had to figure it out with no birth certificate or Social Security card, and could not get the Social Security card because I did not have a birth certificate. I got to Champaign via my sister that was from Indiana, and she came and picked me up in Chicago and brought me down to Champaign, where I have friends and family. I began surfing on my other sister, other relatives, grandmother, and wherever I could sleep. I went to First Followers for assistance, and they provided me with a bus pass and clothing and other essentials, as well as helping me with job searches. I then met Ms. Tammy Little, the Transitional Housing Coordinator from First Followers, on November 15, 2023, to apply for the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Reentry Pilot Program. At the time that I submitted the application, I was advised that they were out of funding. I was told that I would be first on the list to get a one-year voucher, but when funding became available, I was no longer eligible, and I am still homeless to this day. So instead of putting more funding into more policing, please consider programs like the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Reentry Pilot Program that would help me to get housing and become a productive member of society. Without more housing programs and First Followers, all the others being released behind me will be in the same dilemma. Thank you, Javonda White.
For the record, I've lived in Urbana for over 50 years. I've never been assaulted, robbed, or hurt. Urbana has the opportunity to forge a new path for itself. Please don't rush into a decision before the alternatives are clear. Please clarify those alternatives with maximal resident input and the best thinking available. We can make a new model. Creativity abounds in Urbana. Let's use it. The study is partly done. Let's complete it. The community wants to be heard. Let's hear it. We're opening new ground for improving life in Urbana. Let's do it. Please don't jump ahead and close off healthy discussion and research. There's no reason to do so. Sincerely, Jeff Glassman, Ward 5. I have a couple more. Dear members of the Urbana City Council and Mayor Merlin, please read the below at public comment. I'm an Urbana resident and am out of town assisting family, but wanted to be sure to add my voice to those of others who question the FY 2025 budget proposal for its dramatic multi-million-dollar spending plan. For this evening's comments, I would like to ask two related questions. One, why push through so many new police positions now while the Barry Dunn report and review is still ongoing? Why now? How is this responsible when so many elements of this research are ongoing, and especially when several members of the council and the mayor are not seeking re-election? Two, how will this affect the pocketbooks of Urbana residents in the months and years to come? This new budget proposal is tied to future increases. How can Urbana afford this without increasing taxes down the road? What will residents think of this plan then? What of other ways that Urbana might want to spend money in the future? This current budget forecloses any flexibility to take other routes. Again, why push this through in this way right now? I'm confused as to why elements of this budget are being pushed through while they are still under review. Community engagement around policing is an area that needs much more robust attention, more time, indeed the time already expected to be given to this matter. To allow reports to conclude and all manner of different and key stakeholders to participate in discussion would only further knit together the community at large. Short-circuiting this process will only lead to further division. Sincerely, Lyle Leopold. Hello, City Council. Please read my comment out loud during public comment. Dual Dasiki, member of CU Muslim Action Committee and CU Local. I'm asking the council not to rush a decision on such an important topic that will have a very long-lasting impact on our community. Do not approve the increase to the police force at this time. Allow time for you as a council to truly consider all options, including but not limited to the full Barry Dunn report. Thank you, Dua. Then I've got, I think, just one more. Although JI wrote a statement regarding socially conscious spending for collective impact on violence reduction and community healing, I would like if you could read my statement at the end of community input session tonight. Hello, distinguished members of Urbana City Council. I'm writing this evening to highlight a recent presentation we did for the county board regarding outreach activities. Last week, several of my colleagues and service recipients shared powerful testimonies about the transformative impact of the services they received thanks to county ARPA funding provided to our organization. The outcomes were truly inspiring. For instance, we documented over 300 outreach activities in economic development and job readiness, more than 200 activities in advocacy and community engagement, and over 151 outreach activities in community health and wholeness. This totals well over 700 impactful actions, all achieved for a fraction of the cost compared to the current $2 million increase for additional police officers. We are just one part of a large coalition of organizations under the Blueprint to Reduce Community Violence initiative put forth by the City of Champaign, Illinois, which includes up to 20 organizations to create social change. Our goal in using these funds was to utilize a comprehensive wraparound system to address gaps and help reduce violence as an outcome. By collaborating closely with smaller community organizations as well as state-run social services, we aim to create a more effective approach to healing, support, and violence reduction in the community. I firmly believe that increased investment in social services by the city can significantly enhance community well-being and bring about meaningful positive change. Before committing to this substantial increase in funding for more police officers and burdening the community with this considerable expense, it would be in the best interest of the community to, 1, wait for the second part of the Dunn report and its recommendations before hiring any new officers, 2, hold a community forum on discussion to determine the best approach, 3, develop a detailed action plan for moving forward. By taking these steps, we can ensure that the city's resources are used in the most effective way possible to foster a safer, healthier, and more cohesive community. Thank you, James E. Corbin II, Tiger, Marsh followers. I think that's it.
Anybody else have any emails? Anyone else before public input closes? Okay. Moving on to staff report. Okay. Moving on to new business. First item is ordinance number 2024-06-021, an ordinance amending the Urbana zoning map, a 2,625 square foot strip of land adjacent to 710 Cunningham Avenue, plan case number 2490-M-24.
Good evening, Council.
Yes.
I'm just thinking that we might want to extend the meeting, and I don't know if we should extend it to 10:45 or 11?
Probably 11.
11? All right, then I will make a motion that we extend the meeting to 11.
Second.
It's been moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Jaya that the meeting be extended to 11. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Marcus. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Council is being asked to rezone, to approve rezoning a 15-foot by 175-foot strip of land under purchase contract by Mark Allen from East Lawn Burial Park to change the zoning district from agricultural to B3 general business to allow the expansion of the existing vehicle service facility at 710 Cunningham Avenue. Plan Commission reviewed the rezoning on June 6, 2024, and voted unanimously to recommend approval to City Council. Staff requests that this item be placed on Council's consent agenda for next week's meeting. Approval of the rezoning will have no impact on city services. The rezoning aligns with the community business future land designation in the comprehensive plan. In front of you, you see the 15-foot strip along the south side of the vehicle service facility parcel, just north of the saline drainage ditch. The proposed building expansion is roughly here in the back of the building. And some photographs. The yellow part is basically where that strip of land would be off the side of the existing parking lot. Here is that strip again. Here is where the building expansion would be. Building expansion. And there is the recommendation from Plan Commission to forward it to you for approval. And that is the end of my staff report.
Are there any questions for Marcus? Yes, Mary Alice.
So if I can summarize this a bit, the land that they bought is from the cemetery?
They have not bought it yet. It's under contract.
They want to buy it from the cemetery, which is zoned as agriculture right now.
Yes.
And they just need to buy this little strip so that they have a wider drive around?
The entire property has to be zoned B3 to allow
Gotcha.
auto use on it. So even if they're just driving on it, it's got to be zoned B3.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
When will that, I guess, do you know when that purchase will be complete?
All of the paperwork has been turned in, but they're not going to buy it until they know that they have the zoning. If the zoning is not approved, they're not going to buy the strip.
Any other questions? Okay,
I can make a motion.
sure.
I will move on to the consent agenda at the next city council meeting, ordinance number 2024-06021, and ordinance amending the Urbana zoning map, A2 625 square foot strip of land adjacent to 710 Cunningham Avenue, plan case number 2490M24.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Jaya that ordinance number 2024-06-021 and ordinance amending the Urbana zoning map, a 2,625 square foot strip of land adjacent to 710 Cunningham Avenue, plan case number 2490-M-24, be moved onto City Council for approval on the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that passes. Next item is ordinance number 2024-06-022, and ordinance redistricting the wards of the city of Urbana, Illinois.
I'll be
Yes, okay.
taking that.
Okay.
Yes, what you have before you tonight is an ordinance and a proposed ward map that will become the official ward map for the city of Urbana for next spring's election. Just some background information, official population of the city of Urbana decreased approximately 7% as a result of the census 2020, from 41,250 people in 2010 to 38,336 people in 2020. City Council ward boundaries had to be adjusted to reflect the census 2020 count, that's required, and to rebalance the population among the 7 City Council wards. We had to complete this before the petitions are filed in later this year for next spring election. So over the past months, we had invited the public to participate in this process using a map tool called Dave's Redistricting. We invited the public to submit maps. And that public also included city council members if they chose to participate. Through a process, the city council identified first 3 finalist maps, then identified one that they preferred based on a number of different criteria such as compactness, minority representation, deviation from population, population and that sort of thing. And The last step were a couple of tweaks on the preferred map, which brings us to tonight. So the map that is in the packet is the final map proposed by the Urbana City Council, and you have an ordinance that goes along with that, and you also have the official ward descriptions written out in text as well.
Okay, is there any questions? Sharice?
I have a question.
Oh, I'll get to you, Grace. Sharice?
I guess I'm just wondering, I didn't see that in my packet when I downloaded it. I could be, where is it? 'Cause-
Starting on page, well, it's numbered 34 in the packet.
But it's like page 65 in the packet.
Okay, so maybe I just didn't download the right thing. Okay, thank you.
This is the final map.
Grace, what was your question?
I didn't recall seeing any additional public input on this version of the map. I just didn't know if someone could confirm that or speak to if there was any further input on this version.
There was none received at the specialized email that was set up, and it was posted on the website.
Mary Alice?
So I was, as I looked at this map, I know that there were some edits to map 8, and from what I can tell, the major edits here are Ward 4 takes back PAR and FAR, and carves a little bit out of the northern part of 7, and then 6, I think, is more compact than it is currently, but was it James and Grace who worked on this last version? I don't know if you guys could speak to that a little bit in terms of what were summarize what the changes were.
Right, James?
All right, yeah, I can speak to it. Grace had taken the maps and made some adjustments based on what she wanted to see with how Ward 6 would look at the end of it. She had some specific ideas in mind with that, and she could speak to that more if she wishes. Unfortunately, it left Ward 7 and 4 and 5 out of balance, and so I took what Grace had done and moved it back into balance. The other aspect of that was the map resembles the current wards a little bit more than any of the other options that we had previously. There are still some to it. 4 is still wide and short, and some of 6 works up into a little bit of corner there. Does not follow some of the compact and contiguous ideas, but from a scoring model, it scores out better than average, both in that and in minority representation. Preserves Ward 3 to be very similar to what it has been in the past. And Ward 2 has, I think, some movement to the east a little bit in that process. And Grace, if you want to talk a little bit to what was in your mind when you provided that alternate.
Yes, I would say something recognized by Chandra.
Yeah, go ahead, Grace.
Thanks. Yes, I think your summary there is accurate. I will reiterate that one of my intentions here with Ward 6 was to avoid a somewhat homogeneous, affluent, suburban ward, which with the changes that were made to my proposed Ward 6, I think that goal isn't quite achieved here. I think that there are some key neighborhoods that would no longer be part of Ward 6, but I think that the shape of it makes sense looking at the map. But in my opinion, it's not entirely accurate to say it's similar to the other one. I think in a lot of ways it is, but I think there are some key areas that would no longer be part of Ward 6.
Mary Alice?
Grace or James, do you guys happen to remember the largest population deviation based on the final numbers here? Is it on there? Oh, I couldn't
Got a
find it.
handout at church.
Oh.
I forgot to say, I printed out a handout of the analytics that you should have your seat.
One.
All right, I grabbed somebody else's. Wow,
Yes,
the
James.
deviation is small.
James, go ahead.
Yeah, and I will point out that because we anticipate the census, the special census to bring some population back into wards 1 and 2, that's why those are on the negative side of the deviation, even though they're still small. The problem is that the census is going to throw this significantly out of whack if it's successful. We all hope it's successful in counting a number of more people because it means more funding for the city. But in this circumstance, we can only approve a new map that meets the standard as it is. We can't anticipate too much of what the special census might do.
Mayor.
And in case folks are wondering why we can't wait until after the census to do the new map, we are required to have a map done before the next election using the 2020 census. So we're stuck with the 2020 census numbers until 2030 as far as maps go. But this is a terrific map. It's excellent. It really hits the criteria, and I want to thank everyone who participated in the process, who submitted maps, and who contributed along the way.
Mary Alice.
Can I make a motion? I am not going to put it on the consent agenda. Changing the word maps is a big deal. So for the regular agenda at the next city council meeting, I move approval of ordinance number 2024-0622, an ordinance redistricting the wards of the city of Urbana, Illinois for 2024.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Sharice that ordinance number 2024-06-022, an ordinance redistricting the wards of the city of Urbana, Illinois, 2024, onto city council for approval on the regular agenda. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Grace.
I would just say that I'm open to finagling a bit. I don't know if that's what Mary Alice was getting at. Last time this was brought up, the majority of council seemed to not want to mess with any further details, and just want to say that I'm still open to that if others are.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2024-06-023, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, fiscal year 2023 to 2024 estimates.
So I'm going to ask Kyle to speak first to the budget amendment. Just a note that we've addressed both the budget ordinance and the budget amendment for the current fiscal year in one memo.
Okay, good evening. So the amendment for the fiscal 2024 budget is mostly housekeeping items related to things like the timing of expenditures. A couple of exceptions to that relate to the capital improvement fund. Historically and initially, all public facility projects have been tracked and housed within one project, 40800. The proposal within this amendment is to break out the fire station so that each of the fire stations has its own project, just to facilitate more clear management and tracking of the spend related to each of those fire stations. And then related to the sanitary sewer fund, it's a proposed increase of $20,000 to pay for sewer lateral reimbursements, and that's related to a handful of additional applications that have come through for that program.
Do you want me to go ahead and speak to the next ordinance now?
I think we should keep them separate. Are there any questions on the budget amendment? Yes, Sharice.
I'll make a motion. Okay, I'd like to make a motion for regular agenda, ordinance number 2024-06-023, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, fiscal year 2023 to 2024 estimates HRF, to a regular agenda for approval to the city council.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Sharice, seconded by Mary Alice. Ordinance number 2024-06-023, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, fiscal year 2023 to 2024 estimates. On to city council for approval on the regular agenda. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Last item under new business is ordinance number 2024-06-024, an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 annual budget.
So this is the ordinance that would approve next fiscal year's budget, and what you have on the exhibit is all the changes that we currently have from what is in your proposed budget document. So I will speak about some of those. First of all, when the state legislature did their final approval on the state's budget, they delayed the elimination of the grocery tax until January 1, 2026. And so there's actually an increase in revenue of $1 million. We count that as a one-time revenue because we know that there's an end date on that. In community development, per council direction, a $200,000 increase in recurring expense for social services funding is included. In public works, a $127,000 and some odd dollar increase to urban forestry to add an arbor technician. And also there are some just minor amounts rolled forward, $50,000 for grants consultant and $10,000 for mobile tablets. In police, per council direction, the amount that was originally budgeted for a social worker position, which would have been a personnel expense for the city, has now been moved into a professional services line so that we could presumably work out a new contract with Rosecrans or similar to continue that type of service. And then, as we discussed, also a reduction in professional services that have been rolled forward over several years to pay for the Very Dunn study. And then an increase of $800,000 in one-time transfers to the capital improvement fund, which relates to reconciling a transfer between funds. There's some roll forwards of items in the VERF. They're listed there in the memo, and there were some adjustments in the ARPA fund. In the general reserve fund, there's also a change in the amount and timing of the settlement on the Carl property tax case. We expect that'll happen after July 1, and it'll be a smaller number than we originally anticipated. In addition to that, I provided some information on some of the things that were under discussion on June 10th, just to hopefully provide some clarity for additional changes that you may want to make. So one of the things that was discussed was increasing debt for the fire stations by $1 million to $10 million. Again, that would increase the interest cost by $220,000 over 10 years. So keeping the bond issue at $9 million actually would leave more funds available for infrastructure improvements. And then there were a number of items discussed related to the police department. So one was a proposal that there be no increases in police department staffing. So after considering that we already reallocated the funding for the social worker position, that would result in a savings of about $899,000 annually and $806,000 in one-time cost. Again, not including that social worker position. There was another proposal to include a total of 4 patrol positions, 2 of which would backfill the new deputy chief and training sergeant positions, and 2 of which would be additional patrol officers. That would result in a recurring reduction of about $103,000 and a one-time reduction of about $22,000. And then if council were to just add 2 positions to backfill the deputy chief and the training sergeant positions, that would result in a recurring reduction of $309,000 and a one-time reduction of $66,000. Reducing staffing for the community engagement team pilot program to 2 officers would result in a one-time reduction of $103,000. And then the amount of fund balance that was reserved for the second and third years of the pilot program could also be reduced. And then finally, reducing or eliminating staffing for the community service responders would result in about a $225,000 recurring savings and $46,000 and one-time savings. So those are some of the things that were discussed on June 10th. You may have other things that you want to discuss at this point, and we're prepared to make adjustments to the exhibit so that you can have a final budget ordinance for next week that reflects whatever direction we get.
Okay, are there any questions for Elizabeth or Kyle? Okay,
I do have a question.
sure, go ahead, Grace.
I was wondering, why are we calling it backfilling new positions instead of adding the positions of deputy chief and training sergeant? To my understanding, that's what we would be doing, right? On especially I appreciate your notes here on page 3 of 5, that third bullet point down from on that second list, adding 2 positions to backfill the new deputy chief and training sergeant positions. And I'm just been confused on the wording here, because we are adding 2 new leadership positions, and then we're just hiring new patrol officers to fill a vacancy, right?
Correct.
And especially as far as the budget, we're not adding any patrol officers in that case. We're adding these leadership positions. Is that correct? And could you help me understand the wording there?
Yeah, that's correct. The wording is just perhaps not the same as what you would use, but I think that's how we've discussed it internally, so it's.
Carol?
I might just add that because they would be internal promotions, then we think of we're not hiring just an open hiring process. That's for the patrol officers that would be hired in as the cascading promotions would take place. So that's why we think of it as backfill, because they would be internal promotions that then need to be backfilled at the bottom with a patrol officer. So,
Correct.
But
Yes.
I think as long as everyone has the correct understanding, it is a semantics issue.
Yeah, and just to clarify what Carol said, so if we create a second deputy chief, let's say a lieutenant gets promoted to deputy chief, then a sergeant's going to get promoted to lieutenant, and a patrol officer's going to get promoted to sergeant. So ultimately, there's a gap at the bottom.
Yeah.
But to clarify, because I think this is how it was explained previously, this is adding 2 more patrol officers than we currently have.
Well, there's a couple of options listed here.
But the way we're describing it is backfill, right? In terms of folks moving up, if you're just looking at patrol, the net effect is 2 more patrol officers. Is that correct? Just looking at patrol, because I think that's the clarification that's needed. If we're not talking about folks moving up, what is the difference in terms of total patrol officers for this fiscal year versus if we're looking at just the backfill positions?
So you're saying if we're not talking about creating the new
So what is the effect on patrol in terms of the total number of patrol officers of the proposed change in terms of those other positions?
So what's in the proposed budget would include backfilling the 2, so those aren't really new patrol officers, and there would be 3 additional. That's what's in the proposed budget.
So I'm just asking for like the total though, right? Like how many patrol officers do we have right now? Let's start with that. Because again, I think, we've heard a lot of confusion from community members. I want to make sure that we're all operating on the same understanding.
Right, and there's another change in here which kind of makes this a little bit confusing, which is 1.6 officers that have incorrectly been accounted for in patrol that are actually in investigations. So it would be currently, and I'll ask one of our police officers over there to help me if I get that wrong. Currently, there are 31, I believe, because 1.6 of the 32.6 are actually investigations. And in this budget, then there'd be 37, but that includes 3 who would be on the community engagement team. So it'd be 34 without the community engagement team.
Just with the 2 that we're talking about for the backfill, because again, I think that language is really confusing. So going from I think you just said 31 to, if we're just looking at the backfill, then what is that number?
If it's just the backfill, there's no increase in patrol
Well, that's why I
officers.
want clarification, because it's been described a couple different ways where it sounds like adding to, and this isn't a critique, I just want clarification of, is it still 31 in patrol, or is it then 33 in patrol as we're looking at creating these new positions?
If it's just the backfill, it's still 31 in patrol. Somebody over there nod your head, please, to confirm.
There's no reason to be confused because it's confusing. To answer your question, if we backfill just those 2 positions that we're talking about, and if you want to use a different term and call it something else, that's fine, but I would use the term as Elizabeth has, backfill. There is no net change in the patrol division for just those 2 positions, the training sergeant and the deputy chief.
Thank you. I think that's something that's been really confusing for folks. I appreciate that clarification.
James?
Yeah, so if I could summarize, the budget as proposed would end up with 34 patrol officers. Bullet number 3 that we were just talking about would end up with 31 because there's no net change in patrol officers. And bullet number 2 would end up with 33 patrol officers. Is that?
That's correct, excluding the community engagement team, which is also in the proposed
I'm just
budget.
talking about patrol. So original proposal 34. The bullet 2 is 33 and bullet 3 is 31, staying even, but adding those 2 leadership positions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Another question or two. I'm sorry with the delay. I can't see.
Yeah, go ahead, Grace.
Question, maybe rhetorical question, is if we could please call them by, I think, a more accurate term of the new positions that they are. Like if we could avoid the backfill term and just call it what they are, new deputy chief and new training sergeant positions for bullet point number 3. I think that makes things more clear. For the budget, the backfill isn't relevant here. I think we need to just talk about new positions, and that would make things more clear, in addition to talking about the net number of employees. And then my other question was what public input and engagement has gone into the proposed expansions in the police department, especially for the community engagement officers.
Can somebody in police help me with that question?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat it. We were having a sidebar.
Grace asked.
Sure.
Go ahead, Grace.
Oh, I was asking what community input has gone into developing this proposal for expansions in the police department, especially the community response, the community engagement officers.
Well, I can tell you when I first arrived, I started a series of conversations, as I did with the wards. We had the forums, and then I had the 101s in my office, speaking with various groups. Now, I can say definitively, everyone that I met with saw the need and was excited about additional officers in community relations. Now, that could be because we're one-on-one, face-to-face, but everyone that I met with regarding such embraced the concept. But they also said they had a concern based on historical events with respect to race relations and was curious as to how we could improve upon that. And I met with maybe 60 plus people over 3-4 months.
Okay. Any more questions, discussion, or questions? Yes, Sharice.
It's almost 11 o'clock, and for me, I have to go. So I was wondering if we could continue this discussion tomorrow, or if not, I just know I have to be somewhere right now. So I don't know how to move for that, or.
So we do have the option to extend by 30 minutes once more, and that's it, to 11:30. We also have the option to reconvene the meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, in chambers at 7 p.m. If we can ascertain if there will be a quorum of members who have that availability.
Okay, who's available tomorrow at 7 p.m.?
How about Grace?
Grace?
Yes, but I'm remote, so I don't count for a quorum anyway, but yes.
Yeah, I won't be available tomorrow, so somebody else will have to finish chairing the meeting. Okay, well, I guess we are recessing until.
So we have to, what we did last time, just to make it clear and clean and easy, is we have a motion and a second to a time and place certain for the reconvened meeting. So in this instance, we're going to motion to recess until tomorrow, Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 at 7 p.m. here in the Urbana City Council chambers, and we will resume the meeting business exactly where we left off on the agenda. So we will continue the discussion on this ordinance 2024-06-024.
Good question.
Yeah, Mary Alice.
I'm just wondering, I know that Wednesday is a holiday, so we can't meet on Wednesday. Is there an option for meeting on Thursday so that everybody can join?
So if you wish to continue the meeting beyond the 48 hours, we will renotice and it'll be a brand new meeting and we will start at the top of the business for that day, which we absolutely have the ability to do, but understand that we will not pick up where we left off. It's a new meeting, which has the 48-hour notice requirement per the Open Meetings Act.
Just thinking about options. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. James, you had your head on?
I could do that if that's helpful.
Me neither. I mean.
Yeah, if you're not available.
Yeah, there's no point. So stick with Tuesday. I'm not available for the rest of the week.
Tuesday is better than Thursday for me.
No one's made a motion.
Well, I will move that we recess until tomorrow, Tuesday, June 18th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Jay and seconded by James that we recess until tomorrow, June 18th at 7 p.m. All those in council chambers. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, this meeting is recessed.